Destiny is a game that should have been one of the best games of 2014. You have the legendary Halo developer Bungie teamed with Activision to make a $500 million 10-year-long franchise. Even if you're not a fan of Halo, you can't deny that Halo has made a huge impact on the video game industry. Destiny doesn't compare to the games that Bungie has previously developed, such as Halo 1, 2, and 3. What bothers me more than Destiny being a bad game is how Activision misled the public before launch. And almost every step of the way, either Bungie or some marketing team lied to the consumer about the final product. Even the game's initial reveal was deceptive. On February 17th, 2013, Bungie officially announced Destiny with a small documentary. The video gives a general overview of the game's world and plot mixed in with animatics and in-game footage. One thing that stands out in this video is that Bungie hints at the game being set in an open, living world.
We're building something alive. It has a nature that we don't totally control. Things are going to happen that we don't plan, and that's amazing.
I don't know exactly what this means, but maybe they wanted to incorporate some sort of emergent gameplay somehow. At this point, I was intrigued. Bungie had made a space shooter before, and a non-subscription based shooter MMO sounded really cool. We really didn't learn much about Destiny until E3 2013. At the Sony E3 press conference, an awkward, staged gameplay demo was presented. With the overly tactical fake commentary not being synced up with the video feed, it's pretty obvious that the game isn't actually being played live.
There you go. You coming? I'm coming. Someday I knew you'd come right back through my door. How we looking? Looks clear.
One takeaway from this demo is the cinematic with the dude near the end of the presentation.
This is how we talk.
Also, during E3, on the show floor behind closed doors, Joseph Staten implied that the game again would have a huge open world.
But all of this is real geometry. If we wanted to, we could walk out there and explore the cars. Destiny's a big wide open world. Lots of places to go. Lots of fun adventure.
On September 30th, 2013, Joseph Staten left Bungie to work on other things. At the time, it would seem that Destiny's development would keep going on smoothly, but in actuality, Staten's departure was really hurtful to the development. Exactly a year later from when Staten left Bungie, a Reddit post surfaced that discusses the status of the development right around when he left. The post in question suggested that there was internal debate on Destiny's game design. The original poster claimed that, quote, everything fell apart after Staten left. According to the poster, massive cuts to the story were made 7 months before release. Bungie brought in a dude, gave him access to the original script, and had him make Dark Souls-esque item descriptions for the games called Grimoire cards. The poster claimed that most things that were cut were to be reintroduced in the game as DLC. Now, all of this was unconfirmed until very recently, when a court document from Marty O'Donnell's court case proved that the story had changed. Whether those changed story aspects were to be reintroduced as DLC is unconfirmed. Sometime in the midst of Destiny's announcements and release, Bungie invited game journalists to view the game. On a podcast in late 2014, Jeff Gertzman from GiantBomb.com had this to say about his visit earlier that year.
I went up to Bungie to see that game. I remember. They had people come up there saying like, hey, we're gonna show this thing off. And then they did this like shuck and jive in front of people where like they spent some time with, well, you want to maybe talk about what it's like working with Paul McCartney? We got to bring Marty in here. We did this. Like people in other parts of the building were playing the game and they were incredulous when we ran into them that we were not playing it while we were there. And instead, you got someone who got up in front of the crowd and said, let me tell you about the story of Destiny. It's your story. You're going to find a gun, and someone's going to go, where'd you get that gun, man? Then that gun tells a story. No, it's not, because there are fucking, like, 12 guns that matter, if that, and everyone knows where you got it. It's like, where'd you get the fucking Suros? Well, I got it dropped from this. It dropped from one of the 3 things it can fucking drop from.
On July 17th, I checked out the alpha. I genuinely had a great time. Shooting dudes was really enjoyable in both the campaign and multiplayer. The alpha successfully teased just enough story and gameplay to get me interested in the full game. I also checked out the beta a month later, which is more or less the same content. Destiny came out. All of the things Bungie discussed during the pre-release marketing for Destiny turned out to be false. That story that was shown in the E3 demo and the initial reveal trailer, that got ripped out completely. That open world that was promised to us multiple times? Blatant lies. The game is much smaller than we were led to believe. Also, everything in the entire game is instanced out to your party with random people phasing in and out of missions. Bungie, or Activision, straight up lied about several aspects of Destiny. This is a textbook example of pre-release marketing lying to consumers. While games change significantly in development, it still doesn't excuse the amount of lying seen in Destiny's marketing. Recent controversies like the Dark Souls 2 and Witcher 3 graphical changes don't even compare to Destiny. Besides all the things Bungie intentionally or unintentionally misled us about Destiny, how is it as a game? Destiny's greatest strength is its shooting, but the shooting mechanics alone aren't enough to hold it for an entire game. The main campaign is poorly done. The story is literally non-existent throughout the whole game. Problem is that the Grimoire cards are not even stored anywhere in the game. The player has to go out of their way to read them. Almost every mission has the same structure of defending Ghost while he does something with waves of enemies attacking. Bosses are just bullet sponge versions of regular enemies. Content-wise, the campaign is baffling in how stale it is. Due to the lack of coherent meaning in the story, as a result, the game feels sterile and lifeless. Destiny got pretty mixed reviews at launch. In the response to the reviews, Bungie has stated that the game is completely different at level 20 and you should wait until then. As someone who's played up to beat the first raid, I can confirm that yeah, it does change, but not exactly for the better. To address the lack of content, Bungie designed the game around replaying the same missions, bounties, and multiplayer maps to progress. Later in the game, Destiny literally becomes a grind to do anything. Don't have enough basic materials? Better run around in a circle and collect treasure chests. You want to just buy a sick weapon? You better grind some bullshit currency by doing menial and repetitive bounties. When I played, after a certain point, the only way to level up in Destiny is to get special armor that has light. This gear can only be bought with marks and reputation that the player has to grind out doing specific activities. Otherwise, the player has to hope for a drop from select missions. These missions are just campaign missions with different modifiers placed on enemies. Even if the missions were unique, it still doesn't change the fact that the drop for the equipment isn't guaranteed. The player is chained to a random number generator in order to level up in every capacity. To me, this progression design is manipulative and sinister. Instead of the game being good in its own right, this type of game design takes advantage of the psychology of our dumb monkey brains using intermittent positive reinforcement. To me, this reward system is incredibly lazy. Destiny takes what little content it had and stretches it even thinner with this system. The only legitimately great thing about Destiny is the raid, and the player is required to grind out hours upon hours of materials and equipment just to get there. At the time of writing, the light system is being modified to only affect stats, and a more traditional experience progression system is being introduced. I seriously doubt changing this will actually fix anything, but it's a small step in the right direction. It still doesn't excuse the egregious state the game launched in. But like most games these days, Destiny is still being supported post-launch. Even Bungie's quality of support is questionable. Soon after the launch of Destiny, the first expansion was released. The progression for the people who didn't buy the DLC is extremely hampered. Whenever a DLC mission is in the strike rotation, vanilla players are deliberately left out. Obviously, since the player didn't purchase the content, the player should not get access to it, but it also prevents any progression for the player. This unfairly punishes the player for only wanting to progress. Sure, it's still technically possible, the player will just have to wait for a normal mission to become on rotation, but it's going to take much longer. Recently, however, Destiny teamed up with Red Bull. With this new partnership, select Red Bull cans now have a code for an XP boost and an in-game mission. The problem is, various people on the internet were able to reverse engineer the code generation system, causing people to generate codes themselves. Now, physical cans could potentially have codes that are already used. With the Taken King expansion, Bungie needed to record more dialogue for the Ghost. Unfortunately, the Ghost's original voice actor, Peter Dinklage, wasn't able to come back and record the new lines. Instead, they changed the voice actor to Nolan North and had him redo the entire script. They literally patched out all the voice work Peter Dinklage had done for the game. Not only is this absurd and hilarious to me, it definitely shows a lack of foresight on Bungie's end. The value of the expansions can be debated too. For $20 per expansion, you get missions for areas you've already been to, maybe a new raid, and some multiplayer maps. To me, knowing that I'd be replaying the missions over and over again stopped me from buying them. Recently, the Taken King expansion boasts a $40 price tag. An expansion that costs 2/3 of a brand new video game better have significant content changes. To me, it's not really worth it. But that's not the point. Since Destiny doesn't have a monthly subscription, Activision and Bungie instead have decided to string players along with higher price expansions every few months. I don't necessarily have any problems with this in and of itself, but it isn't perfect. Destiny and all the DLC and expansions, including The Taken King, is bundled together for $60. The Taken King by itself is $40. If you're still playing Destiny today, it's safe to assume that you bought the 2 previous expansions. With the $60 bundle, dedicated players are explicitly being punished for adopting early. Bungie can sell The Taken King for however much it wants, but I can't help but feel this pricing gives dedicated players the short end of the stick. But that's Bungie's business plan, manipulating people into playing the game obsessively, and then make those same people who care the most pay the most. With the amount of money thrown at this franchise and the prestige of Bungie, this game should have been mind-blowing. Instead, we get this half-finished, half-assed, poorly supported first-person shooter MMO. Destiny is a textbook example of overpromised and underperformed. Even if the marketing for the game had been perfectly honest, Destiny is a dull, sinister shell of a game. A part of me wants to blame Activision's $500 million devil deal, but that doesn't excuse how poorly Bungie has mishandled Destiny either. I stopped playing Destiny almost immediately after the first raid. At this point, Bungie has to do a hell of a lot of convincing to get me back in.